great to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. Crazy times we're living in, but
Absolutely, absolutely.
power of technology wins again, keeping us.
Exactly, exactly. All the way from Berlin to Jersey City, right? Where you live now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I remember visiting you. I don't when was it? I think it was last February
Yeah,
in New York, and things were completely different. It seemed like, I don't know, today it feels like it was 10 years ago or something.
it really does,
Totally
and that was
lighter
right.
world. Yeah.
That was right before a pandemic, and I believe you guys were probably some of the last visitors that we've had at that old apartment before all the crazy stuff started happening. So that was a good time.
Yeah, it was with the Sound on Sound crew, I think. And I guess that's where they filmed this video where you produced a track for one of them. And actually, one of the Sound on Sound guys, I think, is on the mic, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
track was fun, man. He killed that.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
fun.
Shout to Sound on Sound and everyone who watched the video.
Yeah. Yeah. How did the actual pandemic change your year? Like, did you have, I mean, I guess you have enough to work because whenever I look at your account and talk to you, it seems like you're bombarded with great projects. But can you tell me a little bit about that actually?
Yeah, yeah. The pandemic definitely forced me to pivot certain things in terms of what we were planning in 2020, what was projected. But looking back at it now, a year later and change, it ended up sort of being more of a blessing, honestly, because what it allowed for us to do was restructure the business, and it allowed for me to restructure my workflow and focus on the things that I didn't know I really wanted to do more so than I was back then. One example being, last year we had plans of traveling uh, around the world doing these, music seminars that I was doing, these
Yeah, I
private,
remember you telling me about it. Yeah.
yeah, called BLAP sessions, and we had plans of going back to Europe and going to Asia, and it was this whole thing. And when pandemic hit, we obviously had to put that on pause. So what that allowed for me to do was focus on working. I was already working from home, but really focusing on the music, working from home.
Mhm.
It kind of pushed me to start streaming more online. So that was when I started, streaming more on YouTube and focusing on the YouTube channel. And then I did that for a few months and then pivoted to Twitch.
Mhm.
And then once I got to Twitch, it literally just like it ended up being the thing that I didn't know I was missing all these years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sort of turned into a blessing, and honestly, I've made the most music I've ever made in my entire career in a
Yeah.
12-month time span that I ever have, my whole life. So, that definitely was a sign from, from the bigger powers that be that I was on the right track. So ended up being a blessing. Obviously, a lot of people were affected, and prayers go out to them. And nothing is ever perfect, but we got to work with what we have. So
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like, I mean, also for the company, the demand for the speakers, the demand for the headphones was there the entire year basically, because people spend so much time at home. They want to make the best out of it, so they probably invest in some gear to be creative. And I mean, even just people who love to listen to music would just keep ordering stuff from us and invest in a nice headphone and a nice headphone amp or something just to enjoy the many hours that they would spend at home.
yeah,
So, yeah,
you guys
I
are
can
crushing
totally
it.
relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are crushing. I mean, why at this point in the game, why wouldn't you want the best of the best, right? So
Yeah.
definitely the perfect investment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. Um, what are you working on at the moment, if I may ask?
So, oh man, there's so many things. Every time someone asks me that, I go to my brain and I like think about all the things, laundry list of things.
Yeah.
It's so many different things, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed and very very grateful to be working on things that I really am passionate about. Like all the artists that I'm collaborating with right now, on their own projects, on my own projects. I've built relationships with them, and all the people that I'm collaborating with, the producers I'm collaborating with. It's such one just it's such a blessing. So it's most of what I'm working right now is it's a lot of music, um, without giving too much away. I will say I'm definitely going to be releasing more music this year than I did last year. 2020 for me was a sort of a building phase for me, where I was building up these new components and new businesses and taking risks and trying things, like putting sample packs on eBay for auction and stuff like that. And so I'm really last year was a lot of experimentation, and this year I think we know what we want to do, and so we're putting a lot of energy into the stuff that we're focused on right now. So a lot of music from me. I'm dropping an album that I produced, executive produced, and also produced in its entirety with an amazing artist named Guapdad 4000,
Mm-hmm.
and we're releasing that on 88 Rising label and Paradise Rising. And so shout to Guapdad. We had so much fun making that project. He came to Jersey for a few weeks, and we were masked up and did all the tests and stuff, and we got in and were able to knock out that album, and we can't wait to share it with the world. So we have that, and also executive producing a few other albums that hopefully you guys hear soon, and building the team. This year for me is about building what we've seen works and building sort of for the future. I'm really big on thinking about the future and thinking about like where music is headed and where business is headed, and even like crypto and how all of this stuff sort of um, is related to each other. And so, me sort of thinking ahead, I'm really putting a lot of energy. My team and I are putting a lot of energy into building the team and adding some people for the ride. So we're excited about everything, and we're just keeping it moving. Going to continue to take risks, enjoying all the music I'm making on these brand new head Type 20s. Oh my God, they are so swaggy right now. And yeah, man, thank you guys for like literally changing my life with these speakers. Really, like,
Awesome.
well, when you guys first delivered the first Type 20s to me, they blew my mind. I was on Atom AX7s for a long time,
Yeah.
and so I was familiar with the technology behind, the speakers. And when I started using the Type 20s, I fell in love immediately. It changed the way I make music. It made music even more fun, believe it or not.
Mm.
And I continue, to just enjoy them. And with these brand new ones, what are they? The MK
Yeah, it's just
three,
MK2s. Yeah.
MK2, yeah, the
Yeah.
MK2s are even crazier. I mean, I can't even really imagine getting even better. You know what I mean? They were almost near perfect. So I just want to thank you guys for the headphones are also super amazing. But I'm having a lot of fun with the Type 20s,
Yeah.
and yeah, man, we're just gonna continue to have fun. I don't have any like recent llmind albums because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I know. Of
producing for
course.
other people,
Yeah.
but it's on the way for sure, Fred, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's always the question. Like I'm wondering if the respect for like full length records that have a concept and a beginning and an end, if that sort of respect is still there as it was in earlier years, or if it's just makes much more sense for beat producers to put out like separate beats and go like project by project as opposed to sit down and actually work on something for a half a year or even a year. I feel that I don't know, everything is speeding up to a point that people lack the patience probably to come up with something like that. And I was just wondering, like when listening to your stuff, if there has been like this transition from like a sample based uh, mindset to actually playing instruments and coming up with your own melodies and making use of synthesizers, and may there be software hardware, that this is like a general transition that hip hop went through over the last like 10 to 20 years. And I was wondering if that's actually something you also felt would happen to you or made more sense at one point, to be more responsible for like every part of the track and take a step back from the old school way of doing things.
Yeah, I think there is a beauty in both, right? You know,
Mm.
hip hop started, with sampling records and looping. You find, way before our time, it was, they used to listen to records and then find an open area in the record with no vocals on it, and then they would just like the DJ would just like loop it up, and
Yeah.
then someone would be on the microphone and rap on it, and then that evolved to beat machines and looping and chopping up samples and layering drum breaks and adding their
Mm.
own drums, and then using beat machines like the SP 1200 and the
Yeah. Yeah.
C, and it evolved, like you said, into it went from the hip hop producer being a one person thing, where it was just one person chopping up a record and creating a beat, to now more of a collaborative effort where there are live musicians. Instead of looping up and chopping an old sample, we're creating our own samples, in a way, which is essentially just a
Yeah.
melody. We're just composing melodies. We're collaborating with musicians to put those melodies together, and then maybe we put the drums together, maybe other people do, so we're
Yeah.
exchanging files.
Yeah.
So again, there's a beauty in both. I have been grateful enough to sort of have the ability to have experienced both of what they were like. Back in
Yeah.
2003, 4, 5, 6, when I was a kid, I got to experience the tail end transition of old school beat machines
Mhm.
transitioning into computer based
Yeah.
DAWs and software and FL Studio.
Yeah.
And me right now, I'm like basically 95% in the box, right?
Yeah.
But coming from that school of thought, I understand kind of the mechanics of both. And I do think that that also allows for me to have like a better perspective when I'm producing music, taking the elements of the old school and what was so great about it, but then adopting new school methods
Mm.
to the music, and then kind of, pushing the music forward along in that way. So yeah, the music is changing for sure. I love it all. I love all the changes. I love technology. I love, for instance, how I think it's is it Spotify who started to introduce the collaborative digital collaborative feature on there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then companies like Splice and just these people are creating ways for people like us to create music with each other. And I think that's going to
Yeah.
impact the quality of music in a positive way,
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
into the future.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are behind that agenda now. Like, and it's obviously makes a lot of sense. I think Native Instruments tried that for a while as well, and then obviously there's Splice, and I think there are a few other platforms that dream of this idea of bringing artists together and have them basically work with each other in real time, like even make music together in real time. It's really exciting. It's like a next level of creative
Yeah, it
collaboration.
really is. But I will say as a side note that nothing beats being in the studio with
Sure.
people, in
Yeah.
real life, and being able to just feel the energy, the physical energy of the people around you creatively. I mean, that will never, put it this way, that will never be go out of style. I don't think. Let's hope
Yeah,
not.
no, no, I don't think so either. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you actually start with? Do you remember the first setup that where you thought, okay, I'm a producer now, and this was like the first bunch of machines, or maybe it was just one machine
Yeah.
that made you kind of follow that path?
Yeah. When so early on, when I fell in love with hip hop and I started producing, like I said, early 2000s, in my mom's basement. I'm a kid. I'm broke. I have no job. I'm in school. There's no YouTube tutorials. There's no, no resources. So if you wanted to make beats, you needed, a beat machine or a keyboard. And back then they were super expensive. I mean, an MPC back then costs a couple $1,000. A Triton keyboard or an ASR 10, couple $1,000, and they were really hard to find. So I remember I purchased what they call the poor man's MPC. I purchased it on eBay for $250, and it was the Akai S20.
Oh yeah, of course, classic.
Yeah, now
Yeah,
you know about it, but a lot of people don't know about that thing. It was really, really crappy, but it was $200, and it had a floppy drive, and you can figure out how to make a beat on it. And so I was on that in the very beginning, and then, like I said, I caught the tail end of hardware to software, and then I moved on to Cubase. I was using Cubase for a while,
mm.
and funny enough, I was making beats on PlayStation with the MTV Music Generator.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember
I
that one actually.
graduated the school of MTV Music Generator, like a few other of my peers. So that's where I learned a lot
Yeah,
of DAWs and how to make music on software.
yeah,
And from there, it just kind of evolved. And then I was on the ASR 10 keyboard for a while, and then I started producing in Pro Tools
yeah,
for like 8, 10 years.
yeah,
And now,
yeah,
and now currently I'm fully on Reason right now. So shout out
yeah,
to Reason. I think I'm going to stay put for a while. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, all these like companies like Reason and FL, they slowly like they turned from they were seen as toys from the big companies for a while, and then they really crawled into a much more powerful alternative these days. It's really amazing to see.
absolutely.
Yeah, I remember like when was that? Probably at the end of the '90s, I found like a box of a Lindrum in
Wow.
my father's, I don't know, like some cupboard in the back of the cupboard, but the Lindrum wasn't in there anymore, and he didn't even remember where he got it from. So I just remember like searching the entire apartment, including the basement of the apartment, to find that original Lindrum, but I've never found it. But what
Yeah,
he what he had was, because he just loved spending money on interesting stuff without actually using it. He had like an Oberheim expander, and he had
wow.
like an early Mac with a notator Logic, like early, super early, like dinosaur version of Logic on it. So
Yeah.
that kind of put me on to stuff. And then there was like an Emu sampler at one point or something like that. But
Wow.
yeah, it's
I mean, all that stuff is pretty valuable, I think, at this point.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
amazing.
definitely. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, it's always interesting to see how people started and how they evolve. Actually, I do think that probably a lot of kids out there really identify with you in a way, because you're still like, you have a certain status and you achieved a lot as a producer, but at the same time you're not working in a like $1 million studio on a day-to-day basis. You're still like working with very reasonable amount of gear, and you have an audio interface that people know. You have a pair of speakers, you have a great way of recording with it. It's just the environment that you work with is not crazy far away, unreachable for the majority of the people that follow you, probably. And I think that's probably an important part of it as well, showing them what's possible
Yeah,
with what you have actually. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, man. And that's not even really planned. That's just kind of the way it is. It's like
Yeah.
for many years, I was that kid who thought, I needed this keyboard, and I need the Prophet. I need a rack mount.
Yeah.
I need a crazy $1,000 preamp, and I got to build out like my own soundproof booth, and I need all these things. And then over the years, from producing more and being in big studios all the time and watching the workflow, I noticed and realized that as a music producer, you really don't necessarily need all of those things. I mean, a lot of my producer peers that I see that are into that stuff are really mostly collecting, vintage keyboards, honestly, and do have preamps and stuff like that, which obviously helps. But for the most part, if you're a producer, you can get away with, you know, uh, a computer, a DAW. A lot of producers don't even have keyboards. They're
Yeah.
inputting their notes with their mouse and and this, right,
Yeah.
which is like super basic, and then a good pair of headphones
Yeah.
or some type 20s and, and you're good to, I love plugging you guys because you guys literally are the best, but like that's
Mm.
really all you need, and your
Yeah.
brain, right? So I love that we're able to do our job in such a simple way,
Yeah.
and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it should probably be seen in the context of a specific project. Like maybe next year you feel like recording like classical instruments and build like beats based on that, and then you will have to go to a place with good studio musicians and good microphones, and in that case you might need a certain amount of gear. But then if you go for like a more simple approach, because you know just producing beats for a couple people that you work with at the moment, it can be that simple and efficient, and just pretty much the shortest way from the idea to the actual, you know, to the actual music, without
Yeah.
anything in between. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, technology has allowed for us to be able to do a lot with just our computer. I mean, like you said, if we're doing choirs and strings and orchestras and we're tracking drums and doing all that stuff, you still have the big studios, which obviously serve a purpose. You
Yeah.
want to run your stuff through an SSL and do all the fun analog stuff. But at the end of the day, you're gonna take all of that and it's all gonna go into a computer
Yeah. I mean,
eventually.
to be honest, like I've seen quite a few studios in Berlin lately with I mean hip hop, especially like mainstream hip hop, like German kind of gangster rap is like the most commercial, it's the commercially most successful music in Germany right now.
Wow.
And it's made by people with basically with laptops and great ideas, and probably like an Apollo interface, and that's pretty much about it. So and then they go into these studios because they want the big speakers and they want to check their beats on like really expensive speaker systems, but then they basically use the SSL consoles as laptop stands
Yeah,
as opposed to actually making use of them. I think that's like a classic
you are
situation right now.
100%. You are 100% accurate in that assessment, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a fun idea, but it's
Yeah.
no, I love this freedom. It's great that you don't have to that you can actually do a lot with just a very few tools. And I mean companies like, I guess, like Splice, but also way before that, make it quite easy for you to start with a decent quality. Actually, sometimes I wonder if it's a little sad that people, get the most high resolution quality samples everywhere without wondering what it would be like to record like a great snare drum themselves, or a great, this kind of stuff gets lost a little bit, but that's probably for
Yeah.
for good cause. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to credit the producers and engineers and creators that are creating the source material, right? Like,
Yeah.
you find samples on Splice or on my website, BLAPKits, or just all these great sounding melodies that sound like they were from the 70s and 80s, right? You have like vocals on them, you have string sections. Granted, a lot of them are done in the box because VSTs are just so insane nowadays. But
Yeah.
a big percentage of those are people that are renting studios or running stuff through tape machines and hiring choirs and real human beings getting together and putting in the legwork, all for a 30-second, 1 minute and a half thing that you just some kid wherever they are in the world with internet, they can click once and download it, and then they add drums to it, and then all of a sudden it's like the craziest thing. But a lot of people don't realize the behind the scenes that's involved with creating that full piece of music. So yeah, man, like you really gotta credit the musicians and the sample creators and the producers that are putting all these sounds together.
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, you have a lot of like institutional companies where you can basically like study music production more than ever before. Like in Berlin, I think we have like 3 or 4 of those colleges, like private schools, where you can do like recording and producing and mixing and mastering. Just because I think it's a more realistic perspective than it was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when it was, yeah, when the process from wanting to do it to actually being an engineer was way more complicated and probably like more something that you could achieve in the longer run. um but yeah, I mean, I think it's a great development, and what I really also love about it is that you don't really have to, well, it's an observation I have, is that people who are not restricted by a very specific education sometimes, or probably even often, come up with the more creative and more experimental ideas. This is definitely the case in a lot of, like, in the context of music theory and like classical composition. Very often, like, if you study the rules for too long, you don't dare, stepping out of the rule set and try something that is not allowed by a specific rule set, and then you probably do the more interesting music at the end of the day.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you mentioned that because I was driving this morning and literally, I kid you not, literally, I was thinking about that same thing in my mind. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, for whatever reason, I was listening to something. I think I was listening to classical music. And I was thinking, I was like, wow, they really don't make music like this nowadays anymore in mainstream music. And then I started to think, and I was like, well, it's because most of us don't really know how. We only know how to do it the way we know how. And, back then it was very much, musicality and rule, like you said, a set of rules. And, uh, you know, obviously there was a lot of innovation too, and people were breaking the rules, a lot of the greats, of course, but they knew the rules better. And a lot of them were trained, right? And if you got in front of a piano and didn't know how to read sheet music, you weren't taken seriously, right? And obviously, 2021, that's we're so far from that. It's the rules have changed. In fact, there are new rules. So I was thinking about that, and I'm like, wow. When you listen to music that's on the radio, you listen to mainstream music, and obviously I'm participator of that too. Whether it's pop music, R&B, hip hop, trap, dance, whatever genre you listen to, rock, you definitely notice that we are a generation of music makers that don't follow the same rules that the older, generations used to follow. We gain inspiration from them and what they did, but we're sort of creating this new way of doing it. Like traditional pop music, maybe in the 80s or 90s, you had that popular 4 chord progression, which you still hear nowadays. And you have bridges and all that stuff. But when you listen to a lot of modern music, even pop music, you don't really hear bridges anymore. You don't. You have a lot of, you have songs on the top 10 Billboard global where it's really just like 2 chords, right? And it makes you wonder. It's like, wow, like, is it 2 chords by choice, or is it 2 chords because the producers didn't know how to do or where to take it somewhere to be more complex? Maybe they didn't need to. So I think what you just said is so brilliant, because the not knowing the rules and not fully understanding, the rules of like chords and sheet music and all those things allows for modern producers to sort of take those risks, do their own thing, keep things simple in a way, but also have these moments of complexity that any trained musician would never dare to try to do, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. So we're speaking in a little bit of a different language now, as songwriters, producers, creators, engineers. We're making our own rules as we go along. Some of it sounds amazing, some of it's definitely shitty, but I think that's always been the case, since music has been in existence. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a whirlwind.
Yeah, I think a lot of the classical music heritage lives in modern film music or in
Hmm.
orchestral film music. You would find a lot of the stylistic means that were probably used in orchestral music in the beginning of the 20th century or something, and then now like in like epic orchestra soundtracks, a lot of that stuff is still, I think, very very relevant. But on a performance side of thing, I think because if you write like a crazy experimental orchestra piece these days, it's going to be extremely hard for you to find a place where it can be performed. And most orchestras are relying on stable audiences, and stable audience usually wants to listen to more traditional music and to listen to the good old classics as opposed to hearing something very wild and experimental. But I think in mainstream you're absolutely right. It's you don't have to, you just basically follow by ear, and if it makes sense to you, whatever chord progression it might be, it translates into a great song, into a great beat or something. That's all that it really takes, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a delicate dance, right? It's a dance of creating something that people recognize, but then also something that's exciting and new and fresh and weird at the
Mm.
same time. And you can't have too much of one of the other, right? It's sort of this little sweet spot in the middle where, uh, you know, for example, like the chord progression is very familiar, but you're not using a piano. You're using some crazy, weird instrument that's being sidechained, and you know what I mean. So,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
yeah, there's these little tricks as a producer and as a songwriter where you're creating something that is familiar enough for people to feel comfort,
Yeah.
but new and fresh enough for someone to be intrigued by it and say, "Oh, wow, that's weird and different, but I want to know what happens. I want to keep listening."
I mean,
And that's
sidechaining,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
that's the
I,
best example. Like it's an unwanted effect, something that compressors should never do, and it turned into like a stylistic, like almost iconic effect that you would hear on so many records over the last, I don't know, not even 10 years. It's probably less than that. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so that's the balance that we, every day we find that delicate balance, and we're dancing with familiarity and something that hasn't been done before. And for the people that lean more towards something never been done before, like you just said, they're going to have a hard time convincing people to listen to this because it's just so out there that you have that potential to lose people. And then if you lean over here too much, where you're just super familiar down the middle, we like to say, if you're making music that's down the middle, you're not really pushing it forward. People might recognize, but the type of impact that you want to make is going to be very difficult doing it that way. So yeah, it's that strong balance that we have to try to figure out.
Are there certain habits that you observe when you work that have been with you for, I don't know, a long time, probably many years? Is something that jumps to your mind if you think about it?
Like my own habits,
Yeah,
studio.
like habits when you approach a track, when you work on a track, just even little details. Is there anything you would think that's typically you when you make music?
Yeah, I'm super fidgety, so I always need to be fucking like messing around and fucking around with something. So this is air freshener. Um, that's a silly one, but um, when I'm composing, when I'm creating music, uh, I can play keys, but I'm not like insane. Like I can't play in every key. So stuff like when I'm composing a melody, like I only know generally how to play in C. So I'm like most people. I'm composing in C. That's sort of like a habit of mine. Um, for me, I think because I've been producing for so long and I've just like experimented so much and created so much music, I sort of I sort of like trust I've created this habit of trusting my ears and sort of trying my best to like be in the moment when I'm creating music. So I'm like literally lost in the music where I'm like doing things and it almost feels like, this is going to sound crazy, but it almost feels like an outer body experience where I'm not fully aware of what I'm doing. I'm sort of just like doing things, and then when my ear hears something interesting, I'll make that quick decision to like commit to it. And so, I find myself like committing very early, trusting my instinct when I'm creating. And, obviously I'm not right all the time, but I know what I like and I know what sounds cool. And I commit to those things. And I've been fortunate enough, I've been able to, program my habits and my mind to trust my instinct and not sit there and lose my head over trying to overthink something. Obviously, there's better days than others, and I definitely have days where I feel stuck too. But they're very rare, and I think that's because I was able to create that habit for myself, and I'm still learning it. I'm still getting better, and I would say that that's like one really valuable habit that I follow.
Is the mixing process part of this for you? Or do you usually go for structures and instruments and then deal with the mixing process as a separate stage post production?
Yeah,
Or,
so
or is panning an instrument a creative decision that is an essential part of when you're actually working on something?
yeah, so because I was producing in Pro Tools for so long, I my workflow involves mixing as well. So I'm essentially mixing while I'm creating. So yeah, to answer your question, the answer
Makes
is
sense.
yeah. Like if I'm panning something hard left or hard right, that's very much a creative decision, which is obviously also a mixed decision. When I'm, you know, doing a sharp bell EQ curve, cutting certain frequencies, it is a mixed thing, but it's also a creative thing because I'm altering the texture of a certain instrument or a vocal, which is the equivalent of turning a knob on a VST, basically.
Yeah,
So
totally.
at least
Yeah.
that's how I look at it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the mixing for me is part of the creative, and then I usually very rarely go back to something I made and mix it, because in my mind it's finished, unless we're talking about like creating a song with a vocalist, and then I'll go back and take certain frequencies out based on their vocals and stuff like that, rearrange. But for the most part, when I'm making beats or full song references, it'll when I'm done, it's ready to go, in my mind. So that's yeah, that's kind of been the process for me.
Yeah, okay. I see. No, makes total sense. I totally agree.
Yeah.
If you accuse something, you're creating a space for it and you're shaping like an element of the song and yeah. So in that,
Yeah, that's why I'm like when
especially
I'm
when you come from Pro Tools, I mean, then obviously you're so used to the real art of moving in a studio environment, basically. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like when I'm when I'm delivering stems to an engineer, for them to mix, I'm very protective. I tell them, and I'm putting notes down. I'm like, do not nudge my snare, or that particular instrument is distorted on purpose. That's why when I deliver my stems, I always make sure all the effects are printed audio on there. So I'm very particular about the way my beats are mixed and how they sound. So
I mean, I don't, that's probably not the most important question of this talk, but
shoot, yeah.
I have to ask you, what's up with you and tennis?
Oh man, love tennis. I've been playing since I was a kid. My growing up, I have fond memories of playing with my uncles. We used to live a few blocks away from a park, a tennis court, um, and we used to just go there all the time, play tennis. I was around all of my uncles. They used to play when I was a kid, and so I remember that first time I picked up a racket and, I was hitting with them and they would just show me, this is how you hit a forehand and this is how you hit a backhand. And I would just kind of like watch them and observe and piggyback. And it was one of the most fun sports that I played. As a kid, you play sports, right? So like I played, basketball, football, baseball, wiffle ball, all the stuff you do as kids.
Mm,
But tennis was like the sport that spoke to me the most for whatever reason.
mm.
And it was also like the only sport that I was really kind of like decent at. Like I just wasn't an athletic kid. Like I sucked at everything else. But tennis I was pretty good at. So um, I've, in the past year or year and a half, I've, incorporated tennis into my adult life more than I did for a long time, and I'm enjoying it and been playing a lot, and it's one of my, main sort of like exercise regimens right now.
Mm.
I even purchased this ball feeder
Oh, wow.
with basically like it's like a luggage, but it shoots out balls and it's battery operated. So I take it to the court. I don't need a partner to play with, and I set it up, and it just feeds me balls automatically, and it pivots left and right, so I get a good workout, and it's a
Perfect.
lot of fun, man. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. So I'm playing every 2-3 days. I'm playing.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
That's
it's a lot.
amazing.
It's been a lot of fun, man. So.
Yeah, man, I had such a good
You
moment
play?
when I saw you. Yeah, I used to play a lot actually.
Oh man, if we ever, are in the same place for long enough, we have to
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I thought that was the first thing I thought when I saw you playing. Like, that's a decent technique actually, probably.
Good. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not like super good, like but I can rally. I love rallying,
Yeah, I
and
mean that's what it's about. It's so much fun and it's like I don't know, it's just it puts you under enough stress to actually forget everything else in your life that might go on, because you just
absolutely,
everything is
absolutely.
fast and you need your body and your mind and yeah, that's what I really love about it. Yeah.
Yeah, tennis. I was just talking to my brother about it because he plays too. We were talking about how tennis is like the perfect sport, right? I'm not saying the best sport, but it's the perfect sport. And to me, it is because it literally involves playing tennis involves every single part of your body, including your mind, right? Because like when the ball comes towards you, you literally have to envision the ball getting to the other side, and you have to envision it right before you hit it. You envision where it goes and where you want it to end up, and if you don't keep your eye on the ball and envision that, it's not going to go there, right? Obviously you play, so and everything just from technique to like upper body workout, core, footwork. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously footwork is everything in tennis. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you're using your mind, you're using your eyes. It's to me like the most lit sport. It's one of the best. It's the best sport. I love tennis.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. No, I mean next time I'm in the States or if you ever make it to Berlin, we should definitely play. It's going to be
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
man. Wishing you all the best of luck for this year, for all your crazy projects. We're all looking forward to hear what you're cooking in your studio. And that's not just me saying that, but that's the entire company because everyone here is kind of it's a small family business. So we have probably 15 people doing everything. And obviously everyone knows who we work with, what artists we have on board and as part of the family. So we'll definitely pump the next record when it comes out.
Oh,
It,
thank you guys so
lab.
much. Thank you guys so much. Shout out to the whole staff, the entire family. Your dad and just everyone who's just like crushing it right now. You guys are crushing it. These are the best speakers on the market. I can't say it. I can't say it enough, man. But thank you guys so much. Seriously.